Okay. Oh, goodness. I don't think I muted everyone. Good evening and welcome to Reverend Sherri's Metaphysical Bible Hangout. I am Reverend Sherri James. I'm Senior Minister of Up Church. We are a New Thought, Bible-based Christian church in the Los Angeles area. And if you are ever in Southern California, please make a point to stop by. Our services are every Sunday at 1 p.m. at 600 West Queen Street in Inglewood, California. We would be delighted and honored to have you in our presence. This Bible Hangout is part of my personal online ministry, revsherri.com. I do this every Thursday night. It is a free pro bono, no charge. Just show up and participate, and it is open to everyone. And so I welcome all people, and come ask questions, share with me in this journey of metaphysical Bible, which for me, maybe this is a little bit of a nerd thing, is probably my favorite subject to talk about. So if you're willing to come on in, come on in. So tonight, let me pull up the PowerPoint. Tonight we are talking about, where's my PowerPoint? Okay. Tonight we are talking about Jesus and his women disciples. And this is an exciting series for me because I think that many people don't know that Jesus had women disciples. We've started this series March 19th, and it'll continue until the end of April. And we are talking about women that were named as disciples in the gospel accounts. They've been there all along, and nothing's new. So it's not any information I'm pulling from any source that you don't personally have access to. But depending on the lens that you were given to read the text, you may have just simply missed these names and run right past them. So our schedule for tonight is very simple. We're going to have a couple of announcements, and then we'll do our opening prayer. And we're going to start with women in early Christianity, and we're going to answer two specific questions. Did Jesus advocate equal status for women? And then we're going to try to answer why were women attracted to Jesus's movement, because that's one of the distinctions of his teaching community, spiritual community, versus some of the other spiritual communities that we are aware of. Then we'll look at one specific woman, Mary of Clopas, and we'll look at the canonical references to her and then the non-canonical references to her. And we'll look at the literal and metaphysical meanings of her name. And then look at what is her message for us today. And what I'm going to argue is that her message for us today is one of true commitment. The scripture for this 7-part series is John 4. That's a big old 4. 7-part series is John 4:24. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. And our opening prayer, just right where you are, if you would simply relax and allow all the tension of the day to flow away and feel it leave your body. Wherever you're carrying it, if it's in your back or if the belly is tight or the hips are tight, wherever it is, just speak to it. Relax, let go, let God. Relax, let go, let God. Relax, let go, let God. Whatever has your attention emotionally, simply speak to it. Be still and know that I am God. Be still. Whatever it is, you can let it go for the hour that we are together. If there's whatever it is, it'll be there when we're done. For tonight's class, we speak peace. Peace. Peace, be still. We have come together to learn, to grow, to develop. Our intent is to know the Father more deeply and to remove ourselves into a state of relaxation so that we can hear that still, small, resilient voice saying, love is at hand. Love is at hand. Love is at hand. Thanks, God. I bless this class. I call forth the anointing of Jesus and the fire of Jesus to teach this lesson. Be my words, be my thoughts, be my feelings. Use me, Father, to tell the people what you need them to hear. And so it is. And amen. So our first area of focus is women in early Christianity. Now, the question is, did Jesus advocate equal status for women? And depending on where you have studied or whom you've studied under, you may have heard things like Jesus was an advocate for equal rights for women. Ray writes, I would think the primary women were attracted to Jesus' ministry was that they were welcomed and encouraged, unlike the traditional religious establishment at the time. Also, too, the teaching message itself was a major attraction. Yes, and Alito says yes. Yes, I think that's part of it. I think there's also some additional evidence that I'll share with you. What we do know is that there were schools, philosophical schools, that did advocate for equality among men and women, specifically the Epicureans. The Epicureans were they were an ancient group of followers of the Greek philosopher Epicurus, who maintained that the gods were removed from the concerns of human life, and so were not to be feared or placated. Happiness came in establishing a peaceful harmony with other like-minded people and enjoying the simple pleasures of daily existence. And the other group were the Cynics. The Cynics were Greco-Roman philosophers, commonly portrayed as street preachers who harangued their audiences and urged them to find true freedom by being liberated from all social conventions. The Cynics' decision to live according to nature with none of the niceties of life led their opponents to call them dogs. Hence the word sin, C-Y-N-E in Greek, is for dog. So to say someone's a cynic is to say that they're a dog, by the way, at least in the original intent behind the word. With Jesus, one of the things that really is sort of sets him apart is this is that he had women in his movement. So to our knowledge, besides these philosophical schools that I just told you about, the Epicureans and the Cynics, that we don't know of other rabbis who had women who travel so closely in their party and who were essentially disciples of a particular teacher. So Jesus, and I've shared this before, the apocalyptic message grew out of the Hebrew mind wanting to have life, saying that God was going to intervene in history. So Jesus's message had revolutionary implications. If you remember, the way that he describes it, God is about to intervene in history. He's about to bring about a reversal of fortune. The first will be last, the last will be first. Those who are rich will be impoverished. Those who are poor will be made rich. Those who are exalted will be made low. Those who are low will be exalted. That God is going to intervene in history and set the world aright. And we talked about how that mindset grew out of the Hebrew nation not being in charge of itself. That the last time that it was an independent nation was maybe almost 200 years before, 2 centuries before the birth of Jesus. And if you're God's chosen people, but yet you're in occupied territory, what does that say about how God feels about you? And what does that say about whether or not you are a chosen people? And one of the things that is unique to the Jewish tradition is that God tended to be local. So when you worshiped a God, you worshiped a God that was like the God, like I live in California. It would be the God of California. And I would worship the local deity. Jews were unique in that once they moved out of Israel, they still maintained their religious and cultural identity. And so Yahweh, the God that they worship, was not a God that was local to, say, Palestine, the local to the area. That for them, God was with them, whether they were in Palestine, or which was the name the Persians gave them, but or whether they were in Rome, or whether they were wherever they worshiped that God, and that was unusual, and what set them apart from other religions in the Roman Empire. So, this apocalyptic message, where God has it comes out of a need to understand how is it that we can be God's chosen people and yet not in charge of our own homeland. And not only that, we are, this persecuted people that are basically passed from one country to the next, like pawns. What gives? And so this, you'll see in the literature in our Hebrew scripture that the Hebrews are looking to explain when God is going to come, or that God is going to come. And so you see this in the nature of the literature in like the book of Daniel, in the book of Ezekiel, especially Revelation, you get that. But also you see that in Jesus's message. And so for Jesus, there were two key things. One was this kingdom of God, which was this very egalitarian kingdom. And so I don't know so much that Jesus advocated for women's rights so much as he promoted a kingdom in which everything was going to be turned on its head. And so in his teachings, the kingdom of God appears to refer to an actual kingdom that will come to earth to replace the wicked kingdoms that are now in control of affairs and of God's people here. This would be a utopian kingdom where truth, peace, and justice were restored. It would be ruled by God's anointed one, i.e. the Messiah. The Son of Man, this was something that was key in Jesus' teaching. This was a term whose meaning is very disputed among modern scholars, but is used in some ancient apocalyptic texts to refer to a cosmic judge, not Jesus, sent from heaven at the end of time. So what you see is that again, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The Son of Man is going to come on a cloud. That when he's telling these stories, it's not necessarily telling these stories about himself. He is telling these stories that get your affairs in order, because the kingdom of heaven is at hand, that at any moment God is going to intervene. Some of you won't taste death. God is going to intervene in the course of history and put this world back how it should be. Now, one of the things that Jesus did do, and maybe this is what was attractive to the women, is that Jesus associated with outcasts and the downtrodden as an enactment of his proclamation that the kingdom would belong to such as these. So perhaps this is what attracted women to the movement, was that, here he was associating with these various men and women who were outcasts, who were the people that were looked down upon in society, and so here was their opportunity, and maybe that's what they saw in the movement. But for sure, we don't have evidence of other rabbis that were traveling the way Jesus was traveling as an itinerant preacher, and who had women in their camp. Any questions on that? Any questions on that? Let me go to the... So the next thing I want to share with you are the canonical references for Mary of Clopas, and she's our subject tonight. So the first one, and this is the only one that names her by name, Meanwhile, standing near the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. I want to say something about this Mary, wife of Clopas. What it says is Mary of Clopas. It's a little, in the Greek, it's a little ambiguous. So sometimes it's rendered wife of Clopas. Sometimes it's rendered daughter of Clopas. It just depends on the translation that you get. The New Revised Standard Version renders it wife of Clopas. So meanwhile, standing near the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. And then we have the other references which don't use the name Clopas, but which scholars believe it is referring to the same Mary. So in chapter 27 of Matthew, verses 55 to 56 and verse 61, many women were also there looking on from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee and had provided for him. Among them were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were there, sitting opposite the tomb. So Mary was a super popular name. It would be like the equivalent of like Michael or John today. Very, very popular name. The 28th chapter of Matthew, verses 1 through 10. After the Sabbath, as the first day of the week was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. And suddenly there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descending from heaven came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white as snow. For fear of him, the guards shook and became like dead men. But the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid. I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he has been raised, as he said. Come, see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he has been raised from the dead, and indeed he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him. This is my message for you." So they left the tomb quickly with fear and great joy and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them and said, "Greetings," and they came to him, took hold of his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." So in Matthew, Jesus makes the women the apostles, specifically Mary and the other Mary, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary. In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 15, verses 40, 41, and 47, there were also women looking on from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James the Younger and of Joseph, which also translates as Joseph, and Salome. These used to follow him and provided for him when he was in Galilee. And there were many other women who had come up with him to Jerusalem. Mary Magdalene and the mother of Joseph saw where the body was laid. And so this Mary, the part that's in red, is what scholars believe belongs to Mary of Clopas. Again, this is so what happens when scholars are looking at these texts is that they're trying to work out who everybody is. And so you don't have consistent agreement across the text. So sometimes you'll see Mary of Clopas, which you see only appears in the Gospel of John, but you see when we get to the other parts, you'll see in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it's just the other Mary. Is it the same Mary of Clopas? Possibly. And so scholars look at the text to try to discern, okay, well, who is this? And there's a point at which there's a Mary and a Mary, mother of Joseph and James, meaning there are two of them, which then runs into the problem of, well, was the Mary mother of Joseph and James? Or so these are some of the things that we grapple with. And again, because we have not been taught how to look at the text, when we hold them up side by side, we see all of this disagreement between them. And traditionally, we've been taught to harmonize it as if these different discrepancies don't make a difference, but they do, because they come out of different communities. That there was the community of Mark, out of which the Gospel of Mark came. There was the community of Matthew, out of which the Gospel of Matthew came. There was the community of Luke, out of which the Gospel of Luke came. And the thing is that none of the Gospels have authors, that meaning named authors. All of them were written anonymously, all of them. Those names were added some 100 to 200 years later, once those documents were more widely accepted. But the authors of the text never claimed authorship. But when it came time to say, okay, what's canonical, what belongs in the canon, what is inspired scripture, and what is just somebody writing, well, they had to have a criteria. And so one of the things was, well, let's try to get as close as we can to the authentic words of the apostles and of Jesus. And so there was this movement afoot, and well, I need this to be by a disciple, Gospel of Matthew. But there's nothing that makes the Gospel of Matthew by the disciple Matthew. The other thing is that the Gospels were written some 40 or 50 years after the death of Jesus. So it is, and we know that the men that he that were his closest disciples were illiterate. It is highly unlikely that they wrote anything. What is more likely is that these stories were passed down orally for about 40 years, and over time these stories morphed. And so you had the Matthew tradition of who Jesus was, and you had the Luke tradition of who Jesus was, and you had the Mark tradition of who Jesus was, and these communities over time, the Markan community being the first one, then began to document these oral stories. But these were not eyewitness accounts. There was no secretary taking notes, getting things down exactly as they happened. And then oral stories evolve. So who knows what these stories sounded like in the very, very beginning, but at least the way that we know them today, we know for sure that they have been translated over and over and over again before they got into the written form. And then even in the written form, they've been translated over and over and over again. So we don't even have the originals of the documents. So when we run up against these discrepancies, it's not so simple as, well, let's just go back to the original and see what the original says, because there are no originals. And so we have to use context clues and what's called textual criticism and historical criticism and all types of criticism to look at, well, what might this document be saying? And then, and from a historical standpoint, you really can't say exactly what the document says. You really can't. And so it really, you get to a place where what you are doing is essentially taking a theological stand to say, based on all the evidence, this is what it means to me. And unfortunately, the language that we use is language that says the Bible says, but the Bible doesn't say anything. What happens is that we come to the Bible with our bias, with what means something to us. And then we do what the scholars call proof texting. We start looking for evidence of what we already believe in the text. And it's like, aha, I found it. So you can never escape. You do your best, but you always bring your consciousness to the text. You always bring your consciousness to the text. Any questions on that? The next reference is Acts chapter 1, verse 14. All these were constantly devoting themselves to prayer together with certain women, and in those women we include Mary of Clopas, including Mary, the mother of Jesus, as well as his brothers. What did I do? There we go. The next reference is the 16th chapter of Mark, verses 1 through 8, and then verses 12 through 13. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James. Now, remember in Matthew, it said Mary, let's go back up and look at that. That's Mark. Or maybe it's Luke. Sorry about that. No, it's Mark, sorry. Mary, the mother of James, the younger, and of Joseph. And then you see here, Mary, the mother of James. Is this a different Mary? Is it the same Mary? Is it Mary of Clopas? I don't know. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so that they might go and anoint him. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. They had been saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?" When they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled back. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. But he said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He is not here. Look, there is the place they laid him. But go tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." So they went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them. And they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. After this, he appeared in another form to two of them as they were walking into the country, and they went back and told the rest, but they did not believe them. Again, making the women the apostles, because they are the messenger to the messengers. In Luke chapter 23, verse 49, 55 to 56, but all his acquaintances, including the women who had followed him from Galilee, stood at a distance watching these things. The women who had come with him from Galilee followed, and they saw the tomb and how his body was laid. Then they returned and prepared spices and ointments. On the Sabbath, they rested according to the commandment. And again, we know that Mary is in this group of people, even though she's not named explicitly. The 24th chapter of Luke, verses 1 through 11, and then verses 22 to 24. But on the first day of the week, at early dawn, they came to the tomb, taking the spices that they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly two men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners and be crucified and on the third day rise again?" Then they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all this to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. And again, here we have Mary the mother of James, which it's possible that's the same Mary of Clopas, or she could be included with the other women, who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him. So those are the canonical references to Mary of Clopas. I'm going to check to see if I have any questions. Nope, I don't have any questions coming in. I just mute that. Someone is saying they're not hearing me. Okay, are you guys able to hear me? Okay. Okay, all right. Then I don't know what that was. Myra says no, and Lisa says no. It looks like the sound, and Bruce says I'm fine. Goodness. Sorry, guys. I'm not sure what's going on because some people have sound and some people don't. I will move closer to the mic. Uh-oh, let me not make a mess and start breaking stuff. Hold on. Okay. Hopefully this will work out, and you guys will be able to hear. Um, what would I need to do? Would it just be a muting thing? Yeah, Lisa, everyone else can hear. So I'm not sure what's happening on your end that you can't hear. Hmm. Okay. I'm going to trust that it's recording without a problem. And my apologies. You may have to listen back. I'm so sorry about that. I'm not sure exactly how to troubleshoot this on your end. And I'm hoping that it's just a glitch maybe with the internet connection. Um, so sorry about that. And I'll listen back to the recording myself also to make sure that we hear. But Bruce, you're fine, right? Bruce, you can hear? All right, I'm going to keep going. Okay, so what I just shared with you were the canonical references, and so you can see how some of the texts, where there may be some confusion with the women, with uh, uh, um, with the women, and whether or not Mary of Clopas, who's named in the Gospel of John, is the same Mary that is referred to in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. We do have a reference in one of the non-canonical Gospels, and I think I've shared with you before that. Oh my goodness! Oh, Lisa, I'm so sorry. I'm not sure what would be a problem with the sound for you. Oh, um, yeah. Well, it is recording, and you will be able to listen back. And my apologies. I'm not sure what's happening on that end. I'm thinking that it might be just something that you may need to do with the sound. Maybe the computer is muted. JJ just said, "Is your computer muted?" Um, oh, okay. Okay, I'm going to keep moving because I still have a ton of material I want to share with y'all tonight. So with the non-canonical gospel, so the in the with the gospel records, there were several gospels. Our canon, we don't see our canon listed as a in like with the 27 books that are in it until like the year 367 CE. So that's nearly, 3 or 4 centuries after the time of Jesus. Very long time. Before then, people were studying, like you saw with the Marcionites. The Marcionites were studying an amended version of the Gospel of Luke, and 10 of the 13 letters attributed to Paul. So you had communities that were studying different books, so it wasn't the way that we have it today. So you might have somebody who might have only been studying the Gospel of Matthew, or who might have only been studying the Gospel of Mark, because that's what was important to that community. You also had communities that were studying other books like the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Mary, the Secret Gospel of Mark, the Gospel of Judas. You had these other Gospels that were being disseminated and studied by different communities. When it came time to say, okay, here is the right way to study Jesus, someone had to decide. Someone had to say, this is right and this is wrong. And they had their criteria for saying what was right and what was wrong. And essentially, only 4 of the Gospels passed muster as far as the church fathers were concerned. We've always known that the other Gospels existed because the church fathers write against them and declare them heretical. and they were used by communities that were considered heretical communities. So for a long time, we never had copies of them. Not until 1945, when in a desert in Egypt, a collection was found. And so you'll hear referred to as the Nag Hammadi collection, but it is basically all the Gospels that were said were to be heretical and not to be used and not to be studied. And so they literally emerged from obscurity. And now we have them, and they're translated. You can find free PDFs all around the internet. If you just type in Gnostic Bible, you can find a copy and save it to your computer and read some of these texts. And I think some of them are interesting. And they tell the Jesus story, but they tell it from a different point of view. And so the martyrdom story that we have been given in our tradition is a tradition, but not the only way to view the Jesus story. And many of these Gospels, namely the Gospel of Thomas, view the Jesus story and from a wisdom tradition versus from a he came and died for our sins tradition. And so there have always been communities that have thought differently. But, you label the ones you don't like heretical. So the Gospel of Philip is the one that references Mary of Clopas. And this is what it reads. And this is the only thing that it reads. There were three who always walked with the Lord, Mary his mother and her sister, and Magdalene, the one who was called his companion. His sister and his mother and his companion were each a Mary. The image that you see there, oh, I have the credit, but it's the three Marys. It's a artist rendering of the three Marys. So what we find with Mary of Clopas, if this is the same one, and I think reasonably we can believe that it is, that she was a very close inner circle disciple of Jesus. She was not someone who was on the outskirts. One of the challenges with the gospel record is that when they tell the story, the women come in and out with such infrequency that you can think that they were not central to Jesus's story. But you always have to remember that who's telling the story, and not that someone is necessarily lying, but that they're telling the story from the point of view based on what is important in their world. And Mary of Clopas was with Jesus very early in his ministry, but she was also there to the bitter end. So she was there through the crucifixion, meaning she braved death in order to be by Jesus. So there was a level of commitment, and you don't just show up and get committed overnight. Anybody who has walked this walk, who has developed their spiritual discipline, that it is a walk, and you grow in your commitment. The day that you stand up and say, hey, I'm ready to surrender my life to God, I'm ready to learn and to submit to the will of God, without a shadow of a doubt that's just the beginning. that's like getting in the line for the roller coaster. You ain't even at the gate where you can get in the seat. You're just getting in the line. So Mary, for her to be with him to the end, she didn't just show up yesterday and get committed. She had been with him for years. Whether she is a relative or not, you can see from the references it's not entirely clear. There's a continual association of her as a sister of Mary, Jesus's mother. But then you see also when they give the next sentence, his sister and his mother and his companion were each a Mary. Is it Jesus's sister? Is it his mama's sister? So, it's a little confusing there. But again, these are the kinds of things that scholars sit with to try to figure out who is who. Let me keep going. So some of the meanings of Mary's name, the literal meaning of the name Mary, this actually surprised me because of how we view Mary metaphysically. The literal meaning of the word Mary is contradiction, rebellious outcry, bitter complaint, bitterness, myrrh, bitter waters, aromatic spirits. Isn't that interesting? I was so shocked by that. I had no idea that that was how the name Mary is viewed. Um, Metaphysically, Mary is the feminine, the soul, the affectional and emotional phase of man's being, both when seemingly bound and limited by sensate thought and in its freed, exalted state. It is the feminine, it is the soul. Mary, the mother of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Mary of Bethany, Martha, and the other women who were with Jesus and their fellow disciples so much during his ministry, who ministered unto them of their substance, all represent phases of the individual soul. Your soul develops, and the women represent various phases of the individual soul. Mary of Clopas, as we will see, represents a phase of the soul where the level of commitment is developed. She represents a phase of the soul where commitment is developed. We have been inclined, I copied this because I just liked it. It stood out so much to me. We have been inclined to belittle the value of the feminine side of our nature. The feelings and affections, which are the seed of the emotions in an unredeemed state, belong to the soul. The purification of the soul and the wealth of its devoted, sustaining qualities are needed in the regeneration of the body as much as is the quickening of the disciples. Both soul and understanding, represented by love and wisdom, must enter into our affirmations of truth if those affirmations are really to become substance and life to us. We have been inclined to belittle the value of the feminine side of our nature. The feminine side of our nature is that part of ourselves that it is the feeling side of us. And you cannot discount the feeling side of us. The feeling side of us is as important as the thinking side of us. And it is only when you have the marriage of thinking and feeling that you actually get an output. Thought in the absence of feeling is empty. Feeling in the absence of thought is chaos. It is thinking and feeling that go together. And so we are not all reason. Some things you cannot reason your way to. In fact, if you're going to make it to the kingdom, consciousness, then you're going to have to subvert the intellect. The intellect is valuable. It brings you incredible data. But it is not supreme. Spirit is supreme. And you don't think your way to spirit, you feel your way to spirit. So it behooves you, men and women, to develop your feeling nature. And we have so stamped out our feeling nature that we don't even know what to do with it. But it is the engine that drives the train. If you want to get anything done in this world, you're going to have to put some feeling behind it. Everything that you have in your world right now, you have it because there is feeling behind it. And if you're going to get rid of it, you're going to first get rid of it by getting rid of the feeling. So the feeling is enormously important, and learning how to manage this energy is huge. One of the mystical meanings of the story of Lot when he is leaving Sodom and Gomorrah with his family is that his wife, his feeling nature, turns back and looks. It is the feeling nature that longs for what is. But if you will do like Lot and keep putting one foot in front of the other, those feelings will eventually calcify. They will turn to salt and they will blow away with the sands of time. Most times what happens is that we start looking back at where we were leaving, whoever it is that we're leaving or whatever it is that we're leaving, and longing for it. And instead of continuing to move forward and keep our attention on where we're going, we turn around and get involved with the feeling. And so if we could, we go back to where we are, and then we cycle in the mess one more time. If we can't go back and the bridge has been burned, then we just long for that time, wishing that we could go back and do things differently. The principle is move forward, ever forward, marching onward and upward. Everything is, you are continually unfolding. You don't want to go back to where you were. You don't want to go back to that. Because one, it wasn't a consciousness that you could maintain anyway, so you really don't want to go back there. You want to go back to what you didn't know how to do? No, you want to move forward in consciousness. You want to move forward in your thinking. You want to move forward in your manifestations. So let the past go. It's gone. Let it go. Burn it. Clopas. Clopas literally means glory to the Father, glorious Father. Otherwise, the same name as Alphaeus. Also, Cleophas. You'll see it as Cleophas in Matthew and Clopas in John. He was the husband of Mary, also called Alphaeus, and was the father of one of Jesus' disciples. Cleophas, which is the other name that you see, literally means glorious Father, renowned Father, Father of praise. He was one of the followers of Jesus, and he and a companion, and it's believed that this companion was his wife, Mary, were on their way to Emmaus when Jesus appeared to them in the way and interpreted to them all the scriptures and things concerning himself. These are the gospel references and the meanings of her name. Clopas metaphysically means a mind not yet awakened fully to spiritual understanding. It has heard the truth. Cleophas was a follower of Jesus. He had walked and talked with him, but he had never affirmed as his own truth, the truth that Jesus taught. Through the blessing and breaking of bread, this is in Luke chapter 24, his eyes were opened, his comprehension was cleared, and he realized the truth as his own. Now, let's get to this next piece. What is the message that Mary has for us? Because we've gotten all of this data. And the question is, what does Mary have to say to us? And what I want to put to you is, how did Jesus transform Mary to engender the type of loyalty that she demonstrated? She was with him in the beginning of his ministry and loyal to the bitter end. What level of transformation happened in her to wake up the level of loyalty that she demonstrated? And then, do we have anything in our lives worthy of the kind of devotion Mary showed toward Jesus and his ministry? Do we have anything in our lives worthy of the kind of devotion that she showed toward Jesus? These women were, I said this last time, in our world, 21st century America, 21st century period, Jesus is the only miracle-working Son of God that we know. But in first century Palestine, he was one of many. So this message of I'm the Messiah, I'm the Messiah, I'm the Messiah is was not unique to Jesus. This message that I'm the Messiah was not unique to Jesus. So these women were making a definite choice to throw their weight, whether in just support, whether in just showing up, or whether it was putting some money where your mouth is, but they were making a definite choice to support Jesus. It wasn't simply that he was the only option in the store. there were many men claiming Messiah status. So, and I shared one of them with you, the story of Apollonius of Tyana. And if you just read the broad strokes of his story, you would think that it was a story about Jesus. It follows the same trajectory, same martyrdom trajectory that Jesus' story follows. So these women were making a definite choice. So then the question that you have to ask is, what happened with Mary of Clopas that produced the level of loyalty to Jesus? So not only did she say no to the other Messiah movements, but she said yes to Jesus at a level that she could not be ignored by the pages of history, because surely there were other women who were equally as devoted. But her yes and the way that she showed up made it so that you could not ignore her from the pages of history. And you got to remember, women are rarely mentioned by name. That's why so many women, it's like, who are these people? You're trying to like identify who's who. You got the woman at the Samaritan woman at the well. You got a woman that anoints Jesus's feet. There's another one in Matthew that we think may be the same person that anoints Jesus's head. You know, countless unnamed women. But this woman's contribution was such that she simply could not go unnamed. The author had to name her. So her commitment is monumental because it demanded recognition. So the question is, what did Jesus do that engendered that level of loyalty? What did she see? Did she believe that he was the Messiah promised by Scripture? Had she had a personal transformation? Unfortunately, because of how women were viewed in antiquity, all we get is the fact that we know her by name in the story. That's really it. I think it speaks volumes that she is there at the crucifixion, and she's there when it's time to go and anoint the body. So you know she didn't show up for the first time because, well, you know how it is. If you don't know, somebody's having a funeral, you know, you might send some flowers and some cards, but if you didn't know the person, you're not going to just show up. This is someone who had a relationship. And if we are to believe the Gospel of Philip, she was part of the inner circle. She was part of the inner circle. I know we've been taught that Jesus had only men as part of his inner circle, but we also have had gospel accounts that were considered heretical, that we couldn't, study them. So I think it's at least arguable that for the level of commitment that she demonstrated, where you could not ignore her from the pages of history, that it's reasonable to suggest that she was part of that inner circle, because you couldn't X her out. Do we have anything in our lives worthy of the kind of devotion Mary showed toward Jesus? I think that is the question that Mary of Clopas is asking us to ask ourselves. I think she is, her soul, her life, her work, what she did, is asking us to look at the things that we are committed to in our experience and determine, are they worthy of the energy that we are giving them, of the commitment? And then, do you have something where you're willing to go all in? Do you have? And I think you need it. I think as part of this journey, you need something that is worthy of your commitment at that level. Worthy of your commitment, worthy of your devotion, worthy, as my friend Angela would say, of going hard in the paint. What do you have that's worthy of you going hard in the paint? For those of you that don't know, that's a reference to, I think, basketball. And the paint is the little, like, rectangular little box nearest the goal post, the basket. We don't know what happened with Mary of Clopas. We can only suppose. But I thought that something John Maxwell said that stood out. And John Maxwell is a writer. If you don't have him in your library, add him. He's just wonderful. He's written a ton of books, and one of them is a book called Developing the Leader Within You. And in it, he outlines the 5 levels of leadership. And level 5, of which Jesus was a level 5 leader, is the level of personhood and respect. It is a level of leadership where people follow you. You know, not many people reach personhood. Not many people get there, because it is a certain level of discipline to just get there, to get past the personal aspects of your own character and get you out of the way. But what you see with the level 5 leaders is that your followers are loyal and sacrificial. And doesn't that fit Mary? She's loyal, she's sacrificial. She was willing to sacrifice her own life to be at that crucifixion. You know, Jesus was crucified as an enemy of the state, which meant that anybody next to him is also an enemy of the state. But she's willing to sacrifice it all. It's like, hey, I'm in it. I'm here. You have spent years mentoring and molding leaders. You have become a statesman, consultant, and are sought out by others. This is Jesus. And I should mention that John Maxwell is Christian, and you will find heavy Christian teaching and doctrine in his writing. So I would not be surprised if he wrote this list based on his assessment of how Jesus led. Your greatest joy comes from watching others grow and develop. You transcend the organization. I think that it was Jesus being the type of leader at this level that touched Mary in such a way that she was willing to give all. She was willing to give all. And so again, the question I believe she's asking us to ask ourselves, is there anything in your life worthy of the type of commitment and loyalty Mary of Clopas gave to Jesus? And what has transformed you at depth, thereby earning the respect of your commitment and loyalty? That image that you see there, the artist is Caravaggio, and it is called The Hysteria of Mary. And so you have Mary, those are the 3 Marys. They are Mary, Mother of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and Mary of Clopas. Is there anything in your life worthy of the type of commitment and loyalty that Mary of Clopas gave to Jesus? And what has transformed you at depth, thereby earning the respect of your commitment and loyalty? And I think what her example is calling us to do is examine where our commitments are and then look for places to give our commitment. Look for places where we can give so deeply that it is worth giving all that we have. My call to action to you this week: identify what has your commitment and your loyalty. Just without judgment, what have you been committed and loyal to? And then step back and ask yourself the question, is it, whatever it is, worthy of your commitment and loyalty? And if it is, are there any distractions that need to be moved out of the way to allow greater commitment and loyalty? Because what you may find is that you've got something that is worthy of that level of devotion. You've got something that is worthy of you going hard in the paint. Shout out to Miss Angela Jones. Is there something that's worthy of you giving your all? And if there is, that's great. But now the question is there anything standing in the way of you giving at a deeper level? Where's your attention split? Where maybe something you like, something that's important to you, but you may need to say no to it in order to show up like Mary. I don't think that her story is, well, I know her story is not accidentally there, but I don't think that we can just brush over her and say, oh, we only have these couple of references, and so we don't have anything that we can glean from the story. This woman stayed with Jesus and was committed to him, and again, based on what we have in the Gospel of Philip, was part of his inner circle. If you think about the things that you are committed to, you're committed because they transformed you in some way, positively transformed you in some way. And you were changed to such a degree that you simply could not go anywhere else and would not go anywhere else. And so I believe that Mary is asking us to find what that is in our experience. Find that place in your experience where you can give your all. There's something satisfying when you have given your all. You know, when you hold back, there's always that little thing in the back of your mind like, oh, shoulda, coulda, woulda. You know, I don't know if Mary foresaw Jesus' success. I certainly don't think she saw 21st century, living. And that we would still be talking about their stories and her story. I don't think that she saw that. But she had to have believed that he would be successful. You don't commit if you think somebody's not going to be successful. You just don't. You don't. When you throw your commitment behind something, you believe in its success. So she believed in the success of Jesus and was willing to give her all. There's something that you probably believe in, but you've still been holding back. And maybe it's a fear that needs to get out of the way so that you can finally commit and see this thing through. And I think this is what Mary is encouraging us to do. Alita said the women were the ones who showed up. Honey, the women were the ones who put it down. They were there, they were there, they were there. You cannot X them from the story, and it is significant. Now, the Gospels don't agree on much. I think we've shown that, right? What they do agree on is that the women were the apostles, to the apostles. Whether it was Mary Magdalene singly by herself, or whether it was Mary Magdalene with Mary, mother of Jesus, or whether it was Mary with Mary of Clopas, or right? And the one consistent is Mary of Magdalene. Andrea said, Reverend Sherri, I've studied the Bible since I was a child. I have never had it come alive and be so relevant as the way you make it so during the Metaphysical Bible study. Thank you for your commitment to doing this. Honey, thank you. And I tell you, I do this because of it was done for me. I wish I could take you back to 1998, and I am not half the teacher this woman is. I for sure don't know the Bible the way that she does, and I maybe one day I'll get there. But I was in Chicago at Panorama of Truth, which is my church's international conference, and it was I'd been to Chicago before, but it was my first time at Panorama of Truth, and they said Johnny. Well, I thought Johnny was going to be doing the service, and so I am uber excited, and we are downtown at the Hyatt Regency off of Michigan Avenue, and it's this luxurious hotel, and I mean it's just it's amazing, and the Christ Universal Temple Choir, and they sing and they sing this Kurt Carr song, For Every Mountain, and they just kill it. And the platform person gets up and says, the Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman will be speaking before the Alpha Kappa Alpha Convention. Now, I'm an AKA. I am furious because they're down at the McCormick Center. It's too late for me to get up and run and go to the McCormick Center. And then she says, the sermon will be delivered by the Reverend Dr. Mary Ann Tumpkin. Like, what is a Mary Tumpkin? I'm furious because I don't know who Mary is at this point. I only came to POT to hear Johnny. That's it. I don't, it was meant to be the icing on my cake. So the idea that she was not preaching that Sunday was like, what? And we're in this grand ballroom in the Hyatt. Anyway, I'm grumpy now because I don't even know how to get to. I had to get in a cab to get to the McCormick Center. I don't even know the distance. I just know it's not close, right? It's not a running thing. And so Mary gets up and she preaches this sermon, and I have never been the same. I'd never heard the Bible taught like that ever in my life. And then I became a Mary groupie, and wherever she was, I showed up. If she was teaching, whatever she was teaching, I was there. So it was the love of the Bible that she opened up in me. It is my commitment to do that for other people because it changed my life so changed my career, changed everything that I'm doing. I don't know that I was on this path like this before until I got touched by Mary. So I come to you in the spirit of a very great woman. Mm, mm. I, she made her transition November 2013, and I'm grateful that I got to study with her. I really, really am. I think it was 2006, and I keep these like tablets, like I write journals, longhand journals, because it's one of the ways that I pray. And one of the things that I asked for was I want to sit at the feet of the world's greatest teachers. That's something that's important to me. Because I want to soak up all of this information, and I got to do that with her. I really got to do it. I was in my 20s and I was just traveling around with her, and she was just this spiritual giant, and who let me come in the room and really watch her interact with her team and learn from her. And all of this I'm just kind of soaking in as a young woman, not even knowing half of what I'm hearing, but just, as things are landing, I'm like taking notes, trying to understand, what this whole thing was about. And she was absolutely remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. And I know that the people in Miami, how amazing that woman is. She is irreplaceable. And the only thing that you can do is trust that the best is yet to come. That's all you can do. Trust that the best is yet to come. That there won't be another Mary, but greatness is not wrapped up in Mary. That greatness is available. Greatness is of God. And so it's just that opening up and knowing that as amazing as she is, the best is yet to come. So I appreciate you guys. I appreciate Andrea says, I'm so grateful that I get to study with you. I am a Reverend Sherri groupie. That's crazy to me. That is, because I tell you, I have so much to learn, like so much to learn. So I'm literally, as I get it, I'm pouring it back out to you. So thank you very, very much. I'm really, really, really grateful. Thank you guys. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't expect to do that tonight. So I'm going to sign off and blow my nose. Yeah, if you ever get a chance to get some old tapes of Mary, please do. Please, please do. She's remarkable, and some of her stuff. I mean, it's just she was a bad woman. She was just a bad woman. That's all I could say. And she called herself a Bible toting metaphysician. That's what she was. She's just a country preacher and a Bible toting metaphysician. I release you in the love and the light of the Christ, and I just affirm that you are surrounded by the pure white light of Christ, and you are protected from all harm and negativity. And I affirm that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and so it is. Have an absolutely beautiful night, and I will see you guys next week. Take care.